Black Waitress slipped a note under the billionaire CEO's plate. What he read changed everything. What could possibly be written on a note slipped beneath a billionaire CEO's plate? And why would a waitress choose that moment to leave it there? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're so glad you're here with us for another powerful and unforgettable story. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you so much for being here, watching, and supporting the channel. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think a waitress might write in a note to a billionaire CEO? With that question in mind, let's step into the story and discover how one quiet moment at a table was about to change everything. The $4.8 billion contract landed beneath Nia's hand, and one printed code stopped her cold. Crystal chimed against crystal inside Aurelia, a Manhattan dining room built from black marble, smoked glass, and old money. Amber light slid across silver flatware. A string quartet played softly behind velvet curtains, almost drowned out by the low murmur of attorneys checking figures that could move markets before breakfast. Nia steadied the porcelain plate on her palm. The china was warm. The room was not. Ethan Cole entered at exactly 8 p.m., surrounded by legal counsel and senior executives in dark tailored suits. He did not rush, yet everyone adjusted to his pace. Chairs moved. Conversations lowered. A server straightened a row of wine glasses that was already perfect. Ethan crossed the dining room with his jacket buttoned and his expression controlled, carrying the particular stillness of a man who could not afford to reveal how urgently he needed the people waiting for him. Aurelia had closed its east salon for the meeting. No tourists, no cameras, no interruptions. At the center stood a 12-seat walnut table polished to a mirror sheen. 3 leather document cases rested beside a fountain pen plated in 18-karat gold. Tonight's agreement would authorize the largest transaction of Ethan's career, a $4.8 billion acquisition designed to pull Cole Meridian Group out of a tightening liquidity crisis. Payroll, credit lines, and thousands of jobs sat invisibly between the water glasses. If the deal closed, Ethan would preserve the company his name had built. If it failed, the board would not give him another quarter. Sparkling for the table, the lead attorney said. Nia moved without hesitation. Black uniform, white cuffs, hair pinned neatly above her collar. She poured at the correct angle, leaving each glass 2/3 full. No trembling bottle. No unnecessary glance. Years earlier, she had learned that precision often went unnoticed until a black woman made one mistake. So she made none. Ethan took his seat at the head of the table. He removed his steel watch, placed it beside his phone, and opened the first binder. The dry rasp of heavy paper cut through the music. "We sign tonight," he said. Not loudly. He did not need volume. "Funds clear by 9 tomorrow morning." His attorneys nodded. Across the table, representatives from the acquiring consortium exchanged restrained smiles. Nia set down a plate of seared halibut. Lemon butter released a sharp, clean scent into the warm air. As she withdrew her hand, one page shifted beneath Ethan's binder, pushed sideways by the leather cover. A column of figures appeared. Then a project identifier printed in small gray type near the bottom margin. Meridian 714. Her fingers stopped against the plate's rim. Only for half a second. Long enough for the porcelain to whisper against the wood. Ethan's eyes lifted. Nia corrected the plate by less than an inch and stepped back, but the code remained visible beneath the golden pool of table light. She knew those numbers. Not from a newspaper. Not from restaurant gossip. They had appeared 3 years earlier on an internal audit file, the same file attached to the whistleblower report that had cost her certification, her office, and every interview that ended after a background check. Meridian 714 was supposed to have been closed. Buried. Erased. Yet it now sat inside the contract Ethan had come to sign. "Is something wrong?" Ethan asked. Nia met his gaze, then looked once more at the page. Around them, cutlery gleamed, lawyers waited, and $4.8 billion moved closer to his signature. "No, sir," she said, lifting the empty serving tray. But as she turned away, her thumb pressed hard into its silver edge. If Meridian 714 had returned, Then someone at that table knew exactly what had destroyed her career. Crystal chimed against crystal as Aurelia's sommelier poured a ribbon of burgundy into Victor Hale's glass. Candlelight slid across the window beside him, laying his reflection over the Manhattan skyline. Silver hair, narrow mouth, and a pale crescent scar near his left eyebrow. 3 years vanished in one breath. Nia had seen that face across a conference table when she was still an internal audit specialist, wearing a navy suit instead of a black apron. Victor had placed her whistleblower report between 2 fingers and called its discrepancies clerical noise. 48 hours later, the source files had changed. Her electronic approval appeared on entries she had never authorized. Victor had testified that she acted alone. Now he sat at Ethan Cole's right hand as Cole Meridian Group's trusted chief financial officer. "The figures trouble you?" Victor asked without looking up. His voice carried softly beneath the piano music, polished enough to sound harmless. Nia adjusted the white napkin beside his plate. The linen felt stiff beneath her fingertips. "I was checking the placement, sir." "Then check the silverware." His gaze lifted at last. Recognition tightened one corner of his mouth before disappearing behind the wine glass. "Numbers are above your pay grade." The insult was quiet, precise, designed to leave no bruise anyone else could see. Nia did not answer. She moved to Ethan's side and refilled his water, but her attention crossed the open acquisition schedule in measured passes. Not greedily, not randomly. She tracked columns from projected assets to escrow obligations, paused at a subtotal, then checked it against a footnote on the facing page. Ethan stopped turning his pen. Most servers avoided confidential documents as if the paper itself were hot. Nia studied them the way his own analysts did. First the total, then the assumptions beneath it. Victor closed the folder with his palm. The soft slap of leather against paper cut through the clink of cutlery. "Miss, we need privacy." Nia stepped back, maintaining the posture Aurelia demanded. Straight shoulders, neutral expression, invisible presence. But Victor's command had already answered one question. He remembered her, and he did not want her near those pages. "One moment," Ethan said. For the first time that evening, Victor's hand became still. Ethan turned toward Nia. "You recognized something in that schedule." It was not a question. Warm air drifted from the dining room vents, carrying roasted garlic and cedar smoke, yet a cold bead of condensation ran over the water pitcher into Nia's palm. One honest sentence could cost her this job before dessert. A careless sentence could alert Victor before she understood what Meridian 714 was doing inside a $4.8 billion acquisition. She placed the pitcher on the sideboard rather than risk letting the glass shake. "I recognized the way the totals were built," she said. Victor gave a short laugh. "From restaurant invoices?" Ethan did not join him. His eyes remained on Nia, weighing the difference between curiosity and training. "Where did you learn to read an acquisition schedule?" Nia glanced at Victor's reflection in the window. His face had lost its practiced amusement. Beneath the table, he folded the corner of his napkin once, then again. The same small motion he had made before destroying her testimony 3 years earlier. Nia chose neither confession nor retreat. She lifted the leather folder Victor had closed, set it squarely before Ethan, and aligned the exposed edge of the Meridian 714 page with his right hand. "Ask your chief financial officer why that project code is active," she said. Victor lowered his glass. Ethan looked from the code to the waitress standing beside him, and the balance at the table shifted by a fraction. Enough for Victor to notice. Enough for Nia to know that when she returned to serve the next course, he would be watching every move she made. Amber light slid across the black glass windows as the private dining room doors whispered shut. From the kitchen came the muted strike of copper pans, followed by the warm scent of rosemary and seared beef. Nia lifted the next course onto a walnut service tray, feeling Victor's stare through the room before she faced him. Ethan had not touched the folder. His right hand rested beside Meridian 714, while Victor resumed discussing closing schedules with the buyers, his voice smooth enough to make suspicion sound impolite. "We can explain inactive project codes after execution," Victor said. "Tonight is about timing." Ethan turned one cuff link beneath the table, then explained why she recognized it. A buyer across from him adjusted his silver tie and glanced toward the mirrored wall. Victor gave a small laugh. A former back-office employee sees a familiar number and wants attention. Nothing more. Former. The word landed with surgical precision. Nia set down the plates, porcelain warm against her fingertips, then returned to the service alcove rather than answer. Aurelia's rules were absolute. Staff did not interrupt negotiations, study documents, or approach guests privately. One violation could end a shift. A second could end employment. Behind a velvet partition, she reached for the wine cradle as Victor's voice carried through a narrow gap. "The authorization releases the full consideration immediately," he murmured. "No staggered funding. No secondary confirmation." The buyer replied too softly to catch. Then Victor said, "Once Cole signs, move all 4.8 through the escrow instructions already supplied, before anyone at his treasury office reopens the chain." Nia's hand stopped on the bottle's cold neck. Legitimate acquisitions did not bypass treasury review after signing. They did not rush billions through instructions that could not survive a second look. Ice shifted in the silver bucket with a dry crack. Nia rotated the bottle beneath the alcove lamp. A small gold crescent had been drawn beside the lot number, too deliberate to be a seller mark. Through the partition, the buyer raised two fingers. Victor answered by touching the stem of his empty glass, then looked toward the bottle. The wine was not merely wine. It was their signal. The instructions were ready. The transfer would begin the moment Ethan's pen left the page. Nia wiped the crescent with her thumb. Fresh metallic ink streaked across her skin. Proof enough for her training. Not enough for a room built to believe men in tailored suits before a woman carrying plates. Ethan looked toward the alcove when she emerged. For one measured second, his eyes dropped to the gold smear on her thumb. Then Victor snapped his fingers. "Another server," he told the floor manager. "Now." The manager stiffened near the door, caught between a powerful guest and an employee he could replace before midnight. Nia placed the bottle beside Victor, but turned its marked label toward Ethan. Victor immediately rotated it away. That movement answered the question Meridian 714 had raised. The danger was not buried 3 years in the past. It was moving tonight. Nia stepped beyond the approved service line and stopped at the corner of Ethan's chair. Security shifted beside the frosted doors. Victor's voice hardened. "Walk away." The linen beneath Ethan's plate stirred in the cool air from the vent. Nia looked at the unsigned agreement, then at the pen aligned beside his hand. If she spoke openly, Victor could stop her before she gave Ethan what he needed. If she obeyed, $4.8 billion would disappear behind a signature. She turned toward the service station, tore a narrow strip from the reservation ledger, and reached for a pen. Whatever happened to her job would happen after Ethan had been warned. The scratch of a fountain pen vanished beneath the low murmur of Aurelia's private dining room. Cold air drifted from the brass vent, carrying the scent of truffle butter, cedar smoke, and the burgundy Victor had ordered. At the service station, Nia bent over the torn strip of reservation paper. Her gold-marked thumb held it flat, while she wrote 7 words with the precision of an audit notation. "Don't sign. The escrow account doesn't exist." Then, beneath them, "Ask him about Meridian 714. Across the room, the buyer representative checked his watch and laid one finger against the stem of his wineglass. Victor answered by nudging the marked bottle half an inch toward him. No words. No wasted motion. The signal was complete. The Aurelia floor manager intercepted Nia before she could leave the service station. "You're off the table," he whispered, his polished shoes stopping inches from hers. Mr. Hale requested another server. He reached for the folded note. Nia closed her fist first. The paper pressed into her palm. "Table 12 needs the consommé cleared," she said, lifting a silver service tray before he could answer. Porcelain rattled softly against polished metal. She stepped around him, not toward Ethan, but toward the buyer's side of the table. Victor watched her approach. His cuff shifted as he checked his watch again. The unsigned acquisition agreement remained open beneath the chandelier, its final page waiting beside Ethan's black fountain pen. "I said replace her," Victor told the manager. His voice stayed quiet, but the edge in it crossed the linen faster than a shout. The manager moved in behind Nia. Security turned from the frosted doors. Direct access to Ethan was gone. Nia lowered her tray beside the buyer representative and removed one empty cup, then another. Steam brushed her wrist as a fresh plate passed from a server at her shoulder. She accepted it, crossed behind Ethan's chair, and felt Victor's attention following every step. The plate was warm through the folded napkin. Ethan moved his hand to make room. That was all she needed. Nia set the porcelain before him, let the rim touch the linen, and slid the folded strip beneath it with her thumb. Paper whispered against cloth. Barely a sound. Yet Ethan's eyes dropped to the gold mark on her skin. Nia released the plate and walked on without looking back. The manager caught her near the service line and took the tray from her hands. Kitchen. Now. Behind her, silverware resumed its careful music. Victor uncapped Ethan's pen and placed it beside the signature line. $4.8 billion, he said. One signature, and Cole Meridian controls the Eastern Logistics Corridor by morning. Ethan reached for the plate instead. He shifted it less than an inch. The white edge of the note appeared against the charcoal linen. His fingers stopped. Then he drew the paper into his lap and unfolded it beneath the table. The chandelier burned across the glassware. Ice settled inside a crystal tumbler with a single crack. Ethan read the message once. His jaw tightened at escrow. He read it again at Meridian 714. Victor extended the pen. We're ready. Ethan folded the note along its original crease and placed it beneath his cuff. When he looked up, his expression had returned to the calm that had carried him through hostile boards and collapsing markets. Before we conclude, he said, turning toward Victor, remind me which institution is holding the escrow funds. The buyer representative's fingers slipped from his wineglass. Victor did not answer immediately. Ethan leaned back, leaving the signature page untouched. And while you're at it, he added, almost pleasantly, tell me why Meridian 714 is active. The room lost its rhythm. A server froze with a decanter tilted above an empty glass. Victor's gaze moved from Ethan to the marked bottle, then across the room to Nia. This time, he did not look at her like a waitress who had crossed a line. He looked at her like the line had moved beneath his feet. Where did you hear that code? Victor asked. Ethan covered the pen with one hand. You first. The signature would wait. The man who had controlled the evening now had to explain a number he had believed no one else remembered. Ice clicked against crystal as the air conditioning breathed across Aurelia's private dining room, carrying the scent of cedar smoke and seared rosemary. Under the amber chandelier, the unsigned agreement waited beside Ethan Cole's covered fountain pen. Victor's question still hung over the table. Where had the code come from? Ethan lifted one finger. No one leaves. The buyer representative stopped halfway out of his chair. Victor gave a thin laugh and reached for his phone, but Ethan's palm came down on the white tablecloth between them. Not hard. Final. Keep your hands where I can see them. Near the service doors, the floor manager seized Nia by the elbow. Sir, she interfered with a private negotiation, he said. Security is already coming. Ethan looked toward her. A gold stain marked her thumb from the crescent on the wine bottle. The cuff of her uniform was creased where someone had gripped it. She did not ask for mercy. She met his eyes and waited. Cancel security, Ethan said. The floor manager blinked. Victor leaned forward. Ethan, that woman accessed confidential information. She should be detained before she invents anything else. Then the truth should clear you quickly. Ethan removed his phone, tapped one contact, and placed the device face down beside the untouched contract. Rachel, privileged call. Verify Meridian 714 and the escrow institution named in the acquisition documents. Use outside counsel. Do not contact Treasury, Victor's office, or anyone attending this dinner. His general counsel's voice emerged faintly through the speaker. How long do I have? Ethan glanced at the wall clock. Its brass second hand swept through the silence with tiny mechanical clicks. 10 minutes. Victor's jaw tightened. You're freezing a $4.8 billion acquisition because a waitress passed you a scrap of paper. I'm delaying my signature because my chief financial officer cannot name the bank holding $4.8 billion. The buyer representative opened his leather portfolio. Ethan closed it with 2 fingers. You'll remain seated. Beyond the frosted glass, restaurant staff moved like pale shadows. Inside, no one touched the wine. Nia stepped free when the floor manager's grip loosened, but she did not approach the table. Ethan noticed that restraint. She had crossed one boundary to warn him. She would not cross another merely to defend herself. "Did you write this?" he asked, holding the note by its corner. "Yes." "Do you understand what happens if it's false? To you or to me?" Victor scoffed, but Ethan did not look away from her. "Both." Nia's gaze dropped briefly to the agreement. "Your board removes you for killing the deal. I lose a job I can replace." Her eyes returned to his. "You lose a company thousands of people can't." The room's warm light caught the edge of Ethan's watch as he turned his wrist. 8 minutes remained. His phone vibrated once, but the screen showed only an incoming call from the board chairman. Victor saw the name. "Answer it," he said softly. "Explain why you're humiliating our partners. Explain why the rescue deal is stalled." Ethan declined the call. A second later, a message appeared. "Sign tonight or expect an emergency vote at 9 a.m. There it was. Not a vague threat. A deadline. His chair. His authority. The company he had spent 15 years building. Ethan slid the phone beside the contract where everyone could see the message, then pushed the signature page farther from himself. "Until outside counsel verifies that code, this transaction does not move $1. Victor's face remained composed, but his thumb rubbed the same spot on his cuff again and again. Ethan turned to the floor manager. "Ms. Nia stays where I can speak to her. No security. No removal." Then he faced Victor. "You wanted my signature before midnight. Now you have 7 minutes to give me one reason not to call federal investigators before my lawyer calls back." The clock continued its dry metallic ticking. This time, the deadline belonged to Victor. A printer coughed behind Aurelia's service station, its rollers whining beneath the soft piano drifting through the dining room. A single page slid into the floor manager's hand, still warm and carrying the sharp scent of toner. He read it beneath the amber wall light, then approached Nia with his shoulders drawn tight. "Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." The room seemed to shrink around those words. Silverware stopped touching porcelain. Nia set her tray on the black marble credenza without a rattle. The manager placed the page beside it. Attached was an old internal report bearing the Cole Meridian letterhead and her name under a finding of financial misconduct. "Mr. Hale provided documentation," he said quietly. "Management cannot expose Aurelia to this." Victor remained seated, one hand resting beside his untouched wine. "Now Ethan understands," he said. "She isn't a whistleblower. She's a disgraced auditor with a grievance." Ethan lifted the report. The paper rasped beneath his thumb as he scanned the allegations, dates, and authorization blocks. Doubt altered his face by inches, not miles. His eyes hardened. His voice cooled. "Did you write the note to stop this acquisition because of what happened to you?" "I wrote it because the escrow is false," Nia answered. "That wasn't my question." The 7-minute clock continued ticking. Beyond the frosted windows, Manhattan traffic hissed over wet pavement. Nia met Ethan's gaze while the manager unclipped her brass Aurelia badge. "Yes, I wrote the warning." "No, revenge is not why." Victor leaned back. "Then ask her why no regulator cleared her. Ask why every firm in the city refused to hire her." Ethan placed the old report beside the unsigned agreement. 2 documents. 2 incompatible versions of the same woman. "If you misled me," he said to Nia, "I lose the acquisition, my board removes me, and thousands of employees wake up to a liquidity crisis." Nia unfastened her apron. The coarse black fabric whispered across her uniform before she folded it once and left it on the credenza. "If I walk out now, you can believe him and keep everything you have for another hour." She reached inside the lining of her server's notebook and removed a narrow envelope, softened at the corners from years of handling. Victor's chair scraped the hardwood. "That material belongs to Cole Meridian." For the first time, Nia moved faster than his accusation. She crossed the room and placed the envelope directly on the unsigned signature page. Inside lay a certified copy of the original Meridian 714 reconciliation, marked with transfer dates, approval chains, and the discrepancy she had reported 3 years earlier. Ethan reached for it, but Nia kept 2 fingers on the paper. This is my only surviving copy. It is also the only document that can prove the misconduct finding against me was manufactured. Once your counsel takes it, I may never control where it goes, who sees it, or whether it disappears into another sealed file. Then keep it, Ethan said. Nia released the page. And let you wire $4.8 billion into an account that exists only on paper. The air conditioning pushed cold air across her bare arms. Her badge lay under the amber light, already belonging to someone else. Ethan studied the original figures while Victor demanded that the manager remove her. Nia did not pick up her coat. She did not reclaim the envelope. She stood beside the table with no job, no protection, and no remaining insurance for her own name. Then Ethan found the copied authorization line. The signature looked like Nia's. The approval timestamp, however, had been entered 11 hours after her system access was revoked. He turned the page toward Victor. If she was locked out, Ethan said, "Who signed this?" Victor stared at the paper as Rachel's name lit Ethan's phone. Rachel's voice cut through the silence, sharp against the low jazz and the faint clink of crystal from the bar. "Ethan, the bank confirmed it. Meridian 714 has no escrow account. The routing certificate was fabricated." Ethan switched the call to speaker and set the phone beside the unsigned agreement. Blue light washed across the white tablecloth. Victor's face remained still, but one hand tightened around his wineglass until the stem creaked. "That proves nothing about her," he said. "A failed auditor could have manufactured the warning." Nia stepped toward the table. The cold air raised bumps along her bare arms, and the lemon and cedar scent of the dining room mixed with the metallic smell of freshly printed ink. "Open the reconciliation," she told Ethan. Second page. Authorization history. Victor pushed back his chair. "She no longer works here." "Remove her." "Remain seated," Ethan said. The buyer representative reached for his portfolio. Ethan's palm came down on its leather cover. "Not hard. Final. You too." Nia pointed to the timestamp Ethan had already found. An ordinary review compares signatures. A real audit tests whether the sequence is possible. She placed one finger beneath the authorization line without touching the ink. "My access ended at 6:14 p.m. The approval was entered at 5:17 the next morning. But look at the batch number." Ethan followed the column across the page. "It belongs to the prior business day." "Exactly. The system could not issue that number after midnight. Someone created the approval earlier, held it outside the ledger, then inserted it after my credentials were disabled." Rachel's keyboard clicked through the speaker. "I'm checking the archived access logs." Victor loosened his tie. "Old systems mislabel batches." "Not this one," Nia said. "Cole Meridian's audit platform closes each batch with a control total. Change one entry, and the total changes." Her fingertip moved to a figure buried beneath 6 columns of decimals. "The posted total is 42 cents higher than the archived total. That difference is the digital residue from the copied authorization." Only the muted hiss of the air conditioning remained. Then Rachel stopped typing. "She's right. The archive control total does not match the report Victor submitted." Ethan looked from the 42-cent variance to Nia's copied signature. 3 years of corporate certainty narrowed to a discrepancy smaller than the tip left beneath a coffee cup. "Run the credential metadata," he said. A pause. Keys struck rapidly. The signature image was uploaded from an executive finance terminal, Rachel replied. "Terminal CFO02. The amber light caught a bead of moisture sliding down Victor's glass. No one needed to ask who used that terminal. Rachel continued, her voice lower now. "There's more. Nia's original reconciliation was logged as an internal fraud alert 6 hours before Victor filed the misconduct complaint against her. She reported the irregularity first." Ethan's gaze settled on the bare place where Nia's employee badge had been. The system had not discovered a dishonest auditor. It had received her warning, copied her signature, revoked her access, and buried her beneath its own accusation. His company had preserved Victor's version because Victor had possessed the office, the title, and the authority to make a lie look procedural. Nia had possessed only the numbers. Say it clearly, Ethan told Rachel. For the record, Nia was the original whistleblower. The misconduct file against her was built on falsified authorization data. Victor rose. Ethan rose with him, blocking the aisle between the table and the restaurant doors. Around them, silverware had stopped moving. The buyer representative's portfolio remained trapped beneath Ethan's hand. Sit down, Victor. You cannot detain me over a bookkeeping mismatch. Ethan turned the phone so Rachel could hear every word. It is no longer a mismatch. His voice stayed quiet, forcing the room to lean toward him. It is evidence. Victor's chair scraped across the marble as he lowered himself. For the first time that night, his title offered him no exit. Ethan slid the fabricated report away from Victor and placed it beside Nia's original reconciliation. Truth and accusation. Same table, different weight. Then Rachel delivered the pressure none of them could postpone. Ethan, if you submit these records, federal investigators will examine the entire acquisition and Coal Meridian itself. I need your instruction now. The unsigned $4.8 billion agreement waited beneath the chandelier. Ethan placed his pen across the signature line and looked at Nia. Her name had finally been cleared inside that room. The next choice could put his own name under investigation. Keep Victor seated, he told security. Rachel, stay on the line. The gold fountain pen rolled half an inch across the linen and stopped against the unsigned agreement. Above it, the chandelier burned warm against polished glass, while the air conditioning sent a cold thread through the private dining room. Ethan looked from Nia's original reconciliation to the document that could rescue Coal Meridian's balance sheet before morning. Rachel, he said, submit everything. A beat of static crackled from the speakerphone. Then Rachel answered, carefully. I need you to understand the exposure. Once I contact federal authorities, we cannot control the scope. They may freeze the acquisition, subpoena the board, and examine years of internal controls. Ethan lifted the pen. Victor leaned forward, his cuff striking the plate with a hard porcelain click. The board chairman scheduled an emergency vote for 9, he said. Refuse this deal, and you will not be CEO by breakfast. At the far end of the table, the buyer representative reached toward his leather portfolio. Security stepped between his hand and the brass clasp. Leave it closed, Ethan ordered. The room changed shape around those words. It was no longer a negotiation. It was a preserved scene. Ethan drew one clean line through his signature block. Ink cut across the page like a locked door. The acquisition is terminated. Victor's face tightened beneath the amber light. You're destroying your own company for a fired waitress. Nia removed the evidence folder from beneath her arm. Its cardboard edge was softened from 3 years of being hidden, carried, and guarded. She placed it beside Ethan's crossed-out signature. Not for me, she said. For what the records prove. Rachel asked whether Nia would authorize disclosure of her original complaint, employment file, and testimony. The kitchen doors swung open behind her, releasing a wash of heat, roasted garlic, and muted silverware. For 1 second, Nia's fingers remained on the folder. Giving it up meant losing the last piece of the past she controlled. Her name would leave that room attached to allegations, hearings, and headlines before the truth could catch up. Use my name, she said. All of it. Ethan turned the speakerphone toward her. Rachel, record Ms. Nia's consent and arrange independent counsel for her. Coal Meridian will pay the legal costs without directing her testimony. Nia met his gaze. My testimony is not yours to purchase. That is why the lawyers will not report to me. The answer landed without performance. No promise of a job. No check slid across the table. Only a boundary drawn where power had once erased one. Rachel began the federal referral. Her keyboard sounded through the speaker in crisp, rapid strokes. Ethan then unlocked his phone and called the board chairman. I will not sign, he said when the chairman answered. A voice thundered back loudly enough to bleed through the receiver. Then face the vote at 9. I will, Ethan replied. But before you vote, you will receive the evidence, the referral number, and my instruction to preserve every company record connected to Victor Hale. Victor pushed against the arms of his chair. Security closed in without touching him. Across the table, Nia signed the witness authorization Rachel had sent to Ethan's tablet. Her fingertip dragged slightly over the cool glass before the signature appeared in black. Two decisions now existed where one deal had waited: his refusal and her testimony. Both permanent, both costly. The buyer representative's phone vibrated inside his jacket. Victor's remained face down beside his untouched wine. Then Ethan's screen lit with the federal submission receipt, and, beneath it, a board notice stamped 9 a.m. Rachel's voice lowered. The evidence is officially outside the company now. Ethan set the phone beside Nia's folder as the chandelier reflected in its dark screen. By sunrise, Cole Meridian would have to decide whether truth had saved the company or made its CEO too dangerous to keep. At 8:57 a.m., the muted television above Aurelia's bar flashed a red banner. Cole Meridian CEO faces emergency removal vote. Morning light pressed cold and silver against the private dining room windows. The air smelled of stale coffee, extinguished candles, and the untouched truffle sauce congealing on porcelain. Ethan stood at the head of the table while Nia waited near the door without her employee badge. Her uniform still carried the sharp crease where the floor manager had torn it away. Rachel placed a phone on speaker. "The board is assembled," the chairman said. "Resign before the vote. Blame the failed acquisition on the Waitress, and we may contain this." No one moved. Even Victor stopped testing the security officers surrounding his chair. Ethan looked toward the small plate where Nia's warning had rested hours earlier. Then he slid the unsigned acquisition agreement into the center of the table. "The transaction is terminated," he said. "The federal referral stands, and Nia's name will not be used as a shield." At 9 o'clock, the board voted to remove him. The result appeared on Rachel's tablet seconds later. Ethan lost the office, the corporate aircraft, the company residence, and the authority attached to his signature. He did not reach for the device. Instead, he opened Cole Meridian's internal broadcast system one final time before his credentials expired. The blue light from the screen cut across his face. 3 years ago, Nia reported fraud inside this company, he said into the camera. Her signature was forged. Her warning was buried. She was falsely accused because protecting an executive was easier than listening to the woman who found the truth. Effective immediately, Cole Meridian withdraws every allegation against her. Her employment record will be corrected, her professional file released, and a public retraction issued without condition. Rachel uploaded the forensic report, Nia's original complaint, and Ethan's signed acknowledgement of institutional failure. Across the room, printers woke with a mechanical hum. Federal preservation orders slid onto warm paper. Victor's access was revoked. The buyer representative's portfolio was collected as evidence. Security escorted both men from the room under instructions already confirmed by federal agents waiting downstairs. There was no spectacle. Only shoes against marble, elevator doors closing, and Victor's empty chair facing a contract worth $4.8 billion that would never be signed. Near noon, the Aurelia floor manager returned carrying Nia's badge. "Your termination has been rescinded," he said. Nia looked at the plastic card in his palm, but did not take it. "I'm not coming back to serve this room." Her voice was quiet. Clean. Final. She turned to Rachel and signed the authorization allowing independent counsel to petition for restoration of her auditing credentials. Then she faced the cameras gathered beyond Aurelia's glass doors and stepped into the white glare by choice. "My name is Nia," she said, "and I told the truth the first time." Months later, federal filings exposed the fraudulent acquisition, charges were brought against Victor, and Cole Meridian's corrected records cleared Nia publicly. Her license was restored. She accepted a position with an independent ethics and audit foundation, not as Ethan's employee, but as a professional whose judgment no powerful man could own. Ethan never recovered the title he had surrendered that morning. He did something harder. He testified, accepted oversight, and helped rebuild the company's whistleblower protections without asking to lead it again. On Nia's first day before a congressional accountability panel, she found a plain envelope beside her water glass. Inside was the original note, preserved in an evidence sleeve, and one sentence in Ethan's handwriting. "You saved more than my company. You stopped me from becoming the kind of man who would have buried you twice." Nia folded the message once and walked toward the microphone. He had once owned every seat in the room, but she had taught him that power begins only when truth no longer has to whisper.